Welcome back to our Financial Fridays, Friday Financials here on Airstream in Life. We have talked about what we spent over the 7 months we were traveling on in our Airstream. We've also talked about why tracking your spending is so important. Today, we're going to tell you the major differences in spending between when we were stationary in our Airstream and when we were traveling. Now, some of these differences in spending we anticipated and some we did not. But there are some pretty big differences in when we lived stationary in our Airstream for many months versus when we were off traveling for the 7 months this year, or I guess last year, 2017, in our Airstream. So let's get into them. And again, I'm going to repeat from last week. The way we know that there were big differences in spending is because we track our spending. We track everything we spend in all of our accounts, and like I talked about last week, and you can see the video up here. And that allows us to see these differences and plan accordingly in the future. Okay, so what is one of the big differences when we were stationary and when we were moving around? Camping fees. We anticipated this. So while we've been stationary, we are staying at a KOA in Tucson during high season. And what this means is that we are paying a monthly fee because we are there for the full month. It is high season, so all the fees are higher than normal. And we're also paying electric because we're, again, doing a monthly fee. Most campgrounds will charge you a separate cost for electric if you're doing monthly, since the monthly fee tends to be a little bit cheaper in general than the weekly or daily. Now, what we spend in Tucson when we're here during the winter is about $800, give or take, a month. What we spent on the road was less than $400 a month. If you watched our What We Spent video, I told you the total amount over the 7 months for camping fees, and you will see that that is what happened. We spent half of what we spent when we were stationary. Now, this is true for us because when we were on the road, we boondocked a ton, and we planned on not spending as much on camping fees. Coming up in a few weeks, we will start our RV budgeting series, and we'll talk specifically about camping fees and how you can figure out how much you will be spending based on how you camp. But for us, big difference between stationary and travel lifestyle and costs, camping fees. Another big difference that we anticipated but didn't anticipate quite to the extent was our diesel and gas category or spending. When we're in Tucson, when we're stationary, we're driving, and we occasionally go up to Phoenix, but we are not driving near as much as when we're towing the Airstream places and traveling all over the country. We knew this, and so we kind of picked a number a little over what we spent in Tucson as what we thought we'd spend on the road. Not even close. We spent a lot more money on diesel than we anticipated because we traveled a ton. And so that is one of the big differences as well. If you're in one place and you're just doing day trips or whatever, your diesel or your gas costs is not going to be near as high as if you are towing a 10,000 pound trailer all over the country. So that was another big difference between the traveling and the stationary living. A third one, which we had no idea was going to happen, was groceries. So we are pretty proud of how much we spend on groceries. We actually got it way down to like $300 a month for a while when we were in our house, and we kind of upped it a little bit once we were settled into the Airstream because of the limited storage space and having to not buy fresh foods in bulk quite as much because our fridge and freezer were smaller. But once we hit the road, the problems with storing groceries got even bigger, and therefore our costs for groceries went up. Can't store as much in bulk, can't get to the bulk places where you would buy bulk and get cheaper prices necessarily everywhere you go, even though we do still try to find Costco's when we're on the road. Also, you don't really have a choice in grocery stores unless you're near a big city. There were places where we had to drive 30 minutes to just get to one grocery store, and the veggies there were whatever we could find and often much more expensive than what we're used to here in Tucson when it comes to food prices. And so our grocery spending went way up. Didn't double, not quite that far up, but it did go way up while we were traveling because of not being able to shop sales or know what the pricing is going to be ahead of time, and just kind of make do with what we can find on the road. The only other spending thing that really went up, but we had planned for this one as well, was restaurants. Because you're out traveling, you're in a new town, you want to see it, you want to experience, you want to eat there, you want to try the foods. And so we had budgeted for more money spent out to eat while we were traveling than when we were stationary, and that came true. Really, it didn't have to. We could have budgeted the same amount and just not gone out as much, but it gave us a little bit more opportunity to go out and experience the places we were seeing. So those are our 4 major categories that changed drastically between stationary life and traveling life in our Airstream. Again, camping fees went way down when we started traveling. Diesel went up, groceries went up, and restaurants went up. There are probably other things, actually I know there are other things that kind of fluctuated a little bit, but not to the same extent as those 4 categories. So it's good for us to know when we are budgeting for next year, once we're traveling again and not stationary, what the outlook of our spending will look like. So that's it for this week's Friday financial video. Next week, we're talking emergency funds. If you watched our video about what we spent, you saw the little bit about our truck repairs, our Airstream tires, how that wasn't really included in our normal everyday spending. We considered that special emergency fund spending. We think emergency funds are critical, actually, in our lifestyle, absolutely critical, especially being early retirees and not having full-time incomes. The emergency fund is our backup lifesaver just in case we need it. So next week we talk all about emergency funds and why you should consider having one and how much money you should think about having in it.